Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to finally touch on the response that Riot gave to the crushing disappointment that the fanbase suffered as a result of the preseason start cinematic, as well as to address a bunch of other pain points and concerns that the community has had for quite some time. Now, I'm aware that I'm getting to this quite late. The original video was published about 8 days ago, so many of you may have seen it already, but if you haven't, I will have it linked in the description. And I wanted to touch on this as well because there was another piece of information that came out recently from another Rioter that I think adds a little bit more context to the video that was put out. So first, let's talk about what came out of the video that Riot put out. Now, first I want to say that this video was released at blinding pace for a major company, addressing the entire community, responding to a very unpopular decision. That's not something that companies tend to shotgun. You want to make sure that you take time to get the message right, to find people that can deliver it appropriately, to make it look as professional as possible. Usually the most we'll get is a text apology like the one that Riot put up on their Twitter, and that's just about it. Instead, we got an entire 8-minute video with Brightmoon and Meddler, which looked pretty apropos of nothing, right? This video doesn't look very professional. It looks like they basically sat them down in front of a webcam, said, hey, do you guys know what you want to talk about? Here's a very brief, rough draft script, because it sounded like they were a little off the cuff. Just go and talk about how we're going to actually address things. So I really do appreciate how fast that they were able to get that out. Again, this is not usually something that big companies can do with that degree of speed. The other thing that I think I really liked about this is Riot did take a lot of time to apologize and basically to say, yeah, even though we had some wins, there were a lot more pain points than I think we wanted, and this is generally a problem that we're trying to address. Now, I do want to shy a little bit away from absolving Riot of any of their sins immediately. I don't want to say, well, they said they're sorry, so that means that they're automatically going to be doing better, right? In my opinion, the proof is always going to be in the pudding with regards to Riot fixing, or any video game company, honestly, fixing problems that have sort of occurred and addressing them. I don't want them to just be able to say, oh yeah, you know, it's not a big deal, actually, we're not actually, you know, it is a big deal, but then they don't actually do anything about it, right? So I do want to wait for Riot to basically give us some degree of indication that they are going to be fixing things. But generally speaking, I am a fan of the fact that they did take the time to get this video out as fast as possible and to apologize essentially profusely for the things that went wrong. Does it absolve them of the fact that they went wrong? No, but I think it's a good first step. One of the things that Riot addressed, of course, was the Season Start Cinematic. They basically said for reasons, again, they wouldn't give us much context, but I think I have an idea about what the context might be. I'll touch on it here in a little bit. But basically, they weren't able to do it, but they are going to be locking in. Meddler even said, we are going to guarantee to do one for next season that actually lives up to your guys' you know, what you guys want and lives up to your guys' expectations, which I think is a very good thing to at least have confirmation on. This is a concrete promise that we can now hold Riot to. If they don't give us a Season Start Cinematic that's worthy of being a Season Start Cinematic in 2024, well, then we're allowed to burn Riot Studios to the ground. You heard it here first. But either way, Riot also touched on some of the things that they want to be doing with gameplay. Most notably, they mentioned the fact that there are a lot of pain points and they haven't been discussing a lot, and Riot basically said that we want to be doing more discussion, and that they asked for generally what would make the most sense for discussion. More articles, more videos like this, more long-form videos, basically what is it that the community wants, and that's something that we can try to do. Now, I don't expect this to be very common, but I do remember one thing that Riot were really good at back in the day was actually something that Meddler did, which was the quick gameplay thoughts, which was literally just a thread that Meddler would post on the boards basically once a week saying, hey, here's something that we as a team have been thinking about, or that I have been thinking about, or that I just wanted to address real quick. And it was a really cool, informal way for a designer at the time to pop in and say, hey, you know, here's what we're talking about, and I'll stick around for a little bit and address any more comments that you might have. I thought that was a really, really cool thing that Riot actually, or that Meddler actually did, and I would love to see more of that. I know Riot took over Quick Gameplay Thoughts as sort of this big official column, and I didn't like that because I felt like that was too corporate, that was too, it took too much time for that to actually get out. I would love to see Rioters basically say, hey, you know, every Friday we're just going to have a couple of devs hanging around, and whatever they want to talk about, they can talk about. If you guys want to ask questions, go for it. No guarantee that we'll answer anything, but we'll try to get to what we can. I think that sort of a thing would be really cool to see them do. Or more super informal videos like the one that we just had. I really, the informality of it, I think, is what I want to see. Nothing that's super sanded over in corporate speak. Let us know that there are people working for Riot Games and that they are trying to talk to us about the game, because I think that that's what I want to see, more so than big monolithic company knows what's best for you, don't worry about it. But onto the juicy bits. Riot acknowledged that there are issues with the ways that they've been running events. They specifically called out that a lot of events are just a pass to grind and content to buy, which that is a sentiment that I feel wholeheartedly, and that they are going to be trying to make events feel special in the future. They've also talked about game modes. That's one of the things that have really helped events feel super good, and part of the issue with the reason why we've seen no game modes over the last couple of years is that Teamfight Tactics has actually removed their game modes team. Teamfight Tactics was developed by the featured game modes team, and so when it became its own game and sort of took on a life of its own, the featured game mode team went with it. Riot have finally said, we have built up the team back up, and we're going to be starting development on featured game modes again, which I think is a really cool thing for them to sort of acknowledge that they're going to be doing. But one of the other things that they did confirm was a new game mode in development. This is going to be a 4 teams of 2 competing in sort of a deathmatchy environment where you scrap, you buy items, you go back in. It's the kind of game mode that I'm really excited about because of the disappointment of Snowdown Showdown not being in existence any longer. That's one of the old 1v1 or 2v2 game modes that existed back in the day that hasn't been around for quite some time. I think it was only around for that one winter where Riot did it and never again. And that was sort of disappointing because I really liked the 1v1 and 2v2 game mode, especially because it wasn't just kill your opponent. You could win by either killing their tower or by getting more minions than them. I thought that was a really cool aspect of the game mode, and it was something that I think has been missing for quite some time. This sort of 2v2, well, 2v2v2v2 game mode, I should say, is a way for them to do that again, and I think I'm very excited about the idea that we could see that in the future. They did say that it's still a super rough prototype, so we can't expect this until probably this summer, but that would then line up very nicely with any summer events that they might have planned, wink wink. I think that would be a really cool thing for us to eventually see if it works out, of course. Again, there's a degree of risk of Riot talking about all this stuff in advance because it may or may not actually happen depending on how playtests go and development goes, but generally speaking, I think I'm very excited for this game mode if it does go live. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about as well was the recent context that we got from Riot Lexical over on her Twitter, where she posted a big long post sort of that mostly concerned itself with the Skarner VGU, but also gave a lot of, I think, important context for why the start of Season 2023 has been extremely disappointing, shall we say. First and foremost, Lexical mentions probably the obvious thing that we all should have thought of, but that I at least didn't think of, which was COVID. COVID impacted a ton of things at Riot, not only preventing teams from working as efficiently as they might have, but also causing a lot of team members at Riot to think, hey, maybe I don't actually want to work for Riot anymore. Maybe I want to go off and do different things, whether that's at another video game company or, doing animation for somebody else or, whatever it happens to be. And I think the reason it never sort of clicked for me, and maybe didn't click for some other players as well, is because of the fact that the biggest years of COVID, right when the pandemic started in 2020 and 2021, Riot already had all their eggs in a basket. It really felt like Riot weren't that touched by COVID in those years. Yeah, there were some things that didn't work out. The Ruined King RPG, which wasn't made by Riot, but that didn't come out on time. That was delayed by quite a bit. Riot having to change around the order of their champion releases. Akshan had to come out sooner, Vex had to come out later. There were some things that felt like they were affected by the pandemic, but generally speaking, it felt like Riot just sort of glided through it, that there weren't any problems, right? Everything came out on time. We had 2 major events during those years, the Spirit Blossom event and then the Sentinels of Light event, of course. Regardless of whether or not you agree with the writing, it was still a huge event for Riot to put together in the middle of everything that was going on in the world. And as a result, I think a lot of us just kind of made the implicit assumption that Riot were completely untouched by everything, that they were totally fine, and that, why would we worry about it, business as usual? But we're finally starting to see some of the symptoms of everything that was going on internally. Again, this is something that communication would really help Riot with, but generally speaking, right, this is something that we could finally see that Riot were actually dealing with at the time, with how the Season Start cinematic didn't quite pan out. I could certainly see Riot just not having the resources, or constantly losing people, or just the company they were working with not having people on hand. I could totally see a lot of the pandemic having this impact on Riot, and we're finally starting to see it, especially with regards to the sluggish champion release pace and the extremely sluggish release pace of VGUs and ASUs, right? We were promised the Udyr VGU a couple of years ago. He barely came out over a year after he was initially promised. Ari's ASU took almost a full year for them to actually produce. It was really, really slow, and again, it's because Riot were trying to build their teams back up. Now, Lexical did say that basically their teams are back at full strength and they're starting to fire again on all cylinders, but to me that means it'll still be quite some time before Riot are sort of really back and going at full throttle. That said, they do have, I believe, 2 ASUs in flight, and Lexical talked a little bit more about Skarner specifically and said that where the season start video showed Skarner wasn't wholly accurate. Of course, that video was recorded a few months before it went live, which meant that things had changed, and that Skarner is in production, and in fact mentioned that Skarner is no longer from Shurima. He is from a different region instead. Now, this is potentially good, and it's potentially bad. If Skarner is moved to, let's say, the Kumongu jungle, for example, that I think would be probably fine. It does maybe cause some issues with some of the other things that Riot have developed with regards to hex crystals. There may be a lot of rewriting needed for things like Camille and Seraphine's backstory, but generally speaking, I think that would be alright. If by move to another region they mean Skarner is going to go for that stupid backstory they have where he gets captured by Piltover and turned into a Hextech robot and then becomes the monster that literally no one wanted, that would be a problem. I hope that that's not the case. So it's too early to tell so far, but at the very least, we did have confirmation of that from Lexical's post and from some of her responses from there. So generally speaking, I think where I'm at on Riot with this preseason, I was really down on Riot this preseason. I was about to start saying, man, these guys really got big and corporate and no longer care about the players now and are just doing some really bad decisions. But I think that with the sort of response that we've gotten, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on the condition that things improve, on the condition that Riot make good on their promises, and they do open more communication, they start doing better events, better game modes, and they start actually releasing some of this content that they've been sitting on for quite some time. Now, again, I know this is going to take a lot of time for them to actually do, but I'm very excited to see if this is a place where that we can actually end up, and what it'll actually look like for us in a couple of months. But let me know what you guys think of Riot's sort of response to all this down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you don't agree with me that things will ever get better. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.